Greetings, gamers! Hoser here for Hoser House Rules. Welcome back. Cue the Celtic music. I hope you can hear it. Because today, we have something different. I have something special. I have a change. Let me read something. There was a time when everybody believed in God and the church ruled the world. We call that time the Dark Ages. You are residents of the humble village of Shrewsbury. It is March 28th, 461 AD. An Easter festival, also known as the Festival of Ishtar, is being celebrated today. However, events are about to take a turn for the worse, and your life of adventure is about to begin. What? What's going on? This is not Napoleonics? This is not DBA? This is not Vikings? What's going on? Folks, I'm very excited about this. I am starting a solitaire role-playing campaign. And this is going to be going on for a while. I will be doing, what? Crazy talk? Yes, solo RPG campaign. Now, I'm going to be doing reviews of rules. I'm going to be doing reviews of programmed adventures. I'm going to be doing all kinds of things, as well as playing the campaign out. Before we get started with rules and such, let me just remind you that, going back to Arneson, role-playing and having fun are more important than rules playing, okay? You can make it up as you go along, but RPGs were first and foremost about using your imagination and telling a story. That's what this is about. Using your imagination and telling a story. Okay, that's where you're going to get your fun. That's where you're going to get your excitement. That's where you're going to get your satisfaction. That's where you're going to get your amusement. Using your imagination and telling a story is what role-playing games are about. And even in a solo role-playing game, that's what it's about. Now, folks, let me tell you a couple things. One, role-playing is collaborative. And even though this is a solo campaign, I am here to teach you and to learn from you and to collaborate with you. So please collaborate. I would love to see comments. I would love to see questions. By all means, subscribe if you want to be informed when new stuff comes out and get more information and collaborate more. Please do that. Questions, comments would really be appreciated. All right. So, using your imagination, telling a story, collaborate. To run a solo RPG campaign, well, to run an RPG, but specifically a solo RPG campaign, you need four things. Four things, right? You need the who, what, when, where, why, how. What? Okay, so always be thinking of those terms. You need four things. You need characters. That's the who. You need a space or world. That's the where. You need a system to generate what's happening. Whether it's a programmed adventure system or some other DM simulation system, you need to generate events. And lastly, you need the rules, the tactical rules, such as, for example, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now, I am going to start with the rules because the rules are going to lead to the character generation, the character creation, the character sheet. All right? But first, let me tell you a little bit about my background in RPGs. You think I only play Napoleonics and Vikings and DBA, but I've been playing role-playing games since 75-ish. That's a lot of decades. I have some proof. Let us start with The Village of Hamlet. Advanced D&D. More importantly, let us start with where it really started. My copy from 3rd edition, Gary Gygax and Jeff Perrin. I believe this is in the 70s. Yes, 1978. Chainmail. Played it, loved it. And it led to Dungeons & Dragons. And my copy of $1974 D&D. All right. This is my top secret folder. So, let us start with the rules. I've been playing for a long time. I've played a lot of rules. Let us start with the rules. Which rules do you think I'm going to use? Guess. Well, okay. You're probably wrong. I am going to use 4 Against Darkness. 4 Against Darkness. Why? Because it is the simplest rule system that I have ever seen. Right? There are no attributes. There are no skills, basically. There are no skill checks. It's just roll a d6 and, beat the level of the target. So, I'm using 4 Against Darkness. Now, of course, this is Hoser House rules, so it's going to be very hoserized. Starting with the character sheet. So 4 Against Darkness. Let's talk about characters now. The second thing you need is characters. All right, so in the character sheet, which is right here, and I will try to figure out how to post this somehow, so you could just print it and copy it and use it. I can fit 4 characters on one sheet. Now, 4 Against Darkness, you can fit a character in a 3x5 card. Okay? But let me tell you some of the differences that I am doing, that I am using, that I am incorporating. Because I'm not really playing 4 Against Darkness. I'm not just going to be generating dungeons and doing dungeon crawls nonstop. I'm doing a campaign with all kinds of stuff in it. So, some changes from a character in 4 Against Darkness. You do have the name, you do have a class, you do have a level. These guys are not going to even start out at first level. They're going to be 0 level. Right? They're going to be bumpkins. So they're going to be 0 level. You do have experience, but I'm doing experience completely differently than 4 Against Darkness. I am going to be averaging something like 2 to 4 experience points per session. And I'll explain in the future how many experience points you need to go up a level. But let me say something about levels right now. Dungeons & Dragons, and even 4 Against Darkness, have a serious problem. Mechanical problem, right? And that is characters get too big, characters get too powerful, and the game slows way down. I agree with a lot of people that have said this. The battles just become tedious, and it's difficult for a dungeon master to generate ideas or battles or scenarios that, at the epic level, forget it, all right? They have a scalability problem. So experience is going to be maybe harder to come by, and it's going to take more experience to level up, so that, if you're doing 4 Against Darkness, right, by the time you get to like 3rd level, 4th level, you're +3, +4 and everything, you're basically hitting all the time. You're killing 2-3 minions at a time. So in this game, it is going to be very difficult to get to even something like 3rd level. It's going to be relatively easy for them to get from level 0 to level 1, but it's going to be very difficult to get to something like level 3. That's going to be sort of a cap. Now, I also have alignment on the character sheet. Now, alignment is something that's going to be determined by the actions of the characters as they move along through the campaign, right? If they do kind of bad things, they will become more chaotic. If they do kind of good things, they'll become more lawful. And those are basically the 3 alignments, right? Neutral, lawful, chaotic. If they get to a certain extreme point of being too lawful or too chaotic, then something weird is going to happen. Okay, so in 4 Against Darkness, you have your attack bonus, which is just your level. Maybe you're using a 2-handed weapon, etc. You have your defense, which is basically your armor, shield. Sometimes they have special defense against specific monsters, which I'm probably not going to use. My world is going to be very humanocentric. Not going to see a lot of elves, dwarves, and anything else at first. They may or may not exist. I've added movement allowance, right? 4 Against Darkness is a pen and pencil, pen and paper game. You're not really moving in the room. You're not really facing. You're not using figures. I'll be using figures, right? So movement allowance, and I'm going with your basic D&D 30 feet, which is 6 inches. Whether you're using 1-inch squares, 1-inch hexes, or just nothing at all, and just using your handy dandy 6-inch measuring stick. Basically, characters are going to do 6 inches. You got your hit points, you got your weapons, you got your armor, you got your equipment. You're not going to need to list a lot of equipment. I'm not. Basically, they're going to start with a backpack with basic outdoors gear, food and water, and that's about it. Appropriate clothing, a wool cloak. You'll see when I actually play the first session what they have and why they have it. Gold pieces, forget about it. There's no gold in the Dark Ages. Gold is extremely rare. Forget about it. In my world, in the Dark Ages, 1 silver piece is about the wages for your basic peasant for a month. Okay, so we're dealing silver pieces and copper pieces, 100 copper pieces to a silver piece. Not going to see much gold around. 5 silver pieces is a lot of money. Silver pieces, copper pieces, and I also added what I want and a flaw. And that's going to be developed later as the characters grow in the campaign. Kind of like the main desire, the main driving force, because, you're going to need to have reasons why they're doing stuff. And flaws are always interesting, and that will also come up as they play. But that just adds a lot of flavor to the character. And then I added skills. Now, there really aren't skills, but there are. For example, a cleric can throw bless or cure and can throw heal 3 times a day. So there will be some skills, minimal amount of skills, but there will be some skills. And I'll be starting with 4 characters at 0 level. And the first time I play, which will be the next solo RPG campaign post, will be talking about who they are, what they are, etc. All right, so you need 4 things. You got some rules, Force Against Darkness. You got some slightly modified character sheets. And you need an action system and a space. Now, I'm going to be doing a lot of reviews. For example, Dark City Games. You can just go there, buy a programmed adventure for $13, download the rules for free. It's about 8 pages. Half of them are spells. Legends of the Ancient World. Dark City Games. Just Google Dark City Games or www.darkcitygames.com. You can get free rules. They're based on the Fantasy Trip, so 3D6 system. I'll be reviewing a lot of their products and using them in the campaign when appropriate. For example, this is one of the first ones. They have a couple of free scenarios that you can just print and play. And the Sewers of Red Point is very nice scenario. I'll review it later. Fire in the Streets is one of the ones you should do first. They each come with like some counters, cutout counters, cardboard counters, and a map. You can see this is folded 4 ways, so this used to fit in a space this size, right? And so it comes in a little plastic envelope that big with the rules. Every adventure has a full copy of the rules in it, and a map, which I've had basically just laminated. I do them double-sided. This one is Raid on Signosa. This one is the Sewers of Red Point. You can use this for all kinds of stuff. Alright, so we're talking about a world and an action system, right? That's an example of an action system. You buy the program adventure, you read through it, you make your choices, you have your fights, it tells you what happens, etc. But that's not what I'm using. Okay? I'm using 4 Against Darkness characters. I'm basically using 4 Against Darkness combat rules. But the world and system I am using is my favorite programmed adventure and probably the best one to play ever. The most important one to play ever. Grail Quest. The Quest for the Holy Grail. Micro Quest number 3. 1980, The Fantasy Trip. Metagaming, 1980, Steve Jackson. Brilliant. So this has a programmed adventure. It also has a really nice random encounter table that I might be using. I have a couple. It has inns, it has cities, it has a whole world. You travel around and you do things. But they're not starting as knights. They're not starting looking for the Grail. They're starting, you'll see where and how. Now, if you play this out and you map it, like I do for all the programmed adventures whenever possible, you get this map. This is the map of Grail Quest. Okay? Without the islands, I added those. And Grail Quest is just straight up and down, so you can do it on squares, but I did it on hexes, comes out the same. So this is the world. This is the world the characters are going to be playing in. This is the world that the Solitaire RPG campaign is going to take place in. So I have my space, and I have my system. But there's many different spaces and many different systems you could use to generate adventures and to map out the situation. So I'll be reviewing some other things later on you could use. And don't even worry about this map, because these guys are bumpkins. But I'll tell you from. They're from this village right here. This little coastal village right here. They've never been away from home. They don't know what the world looks like. They've never seen a map like that. They don't know what's going on. You'll find out later what's going on. I'll find out later what's going on, because it's a solitaire campaign which will be developing semi-randomly. About half of it will be programmed from Grail Quest, and about half of it will be random in different ways. So I don't know what's going to happen, and that's the way it should be in an RPG, in a solo RPG. It's not, for me, it's not just enough to like do a dungeon crawl after dungeon crawl after dungeon crawl in 4 Against Darkness. I want a whole world. I want different kinds of adventures, above ground, below ground, NPCs, and that's going to generate that for me. All right, now a little bit more about the tactical rules. All right, so there's more than I'll be using figures, on either hex paper or just blank felt, and moving around with terrain. And the bad news is I'll be using 15 millimeter figures. Okay, so they're like this big. Here's a little wizard. Maybe I will scale up to 25 millimeter when I have more figures. I have some D&D figures, but they're not quite what I want for this campaign. So it's nice if it's more visually impressive, if you have like a big layout with 25 millimeter buildings and bridges and forest and bigger figures. But don't get hung up on the figures. Don't get hung up on the scenery. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're using gummy bears for your figures, right? Or whatever. Doesn't matter what you're playing on. Doesn't matter what you're playing with. This is a solo RPG. What matters is use your imagination, tell a story, have fun. Okay, so some rules changes or additions. Bows and spells have a 12-inch range. A short rest, as per D&D, is like 15 minutes, which separates encounters. So at a short rest, you could do like bandaging, stuff like that. Of course, as per the rules, a 1 always fails and a 6 explodes. But I'm going a little bit further than that. A 1 could be a critical failure. So if you roll a 1, that could explode the other way. You roll that again. If you roll another 1, 2 ones in a row, that's going to be a critical failure and something bad is going to happen. A 6 explodes positively, and you do more damage or whatever as per the rules. But I may come up with some critical hit type stuff for, say, a double 6. Move allowance 6 inches. You can move and attack. You can double move. Some of the creatures will move different distances. There'll be rough terrain. Most people will be half move in rough terrain. There'll be -1 fighting in rough terrain, unless they have special abilities. For example, like I would say, maybe a thief or a ranger has more mobility. If they're not wearing heavy armor, they wouldn't be -1 in rough terrain. They wouldn't pay double movement in rough terrain. But most people are going to pay double movement in rough terrain and be -1 if they're standing in rough terrain. Kind of like as per the rules, the mobs will generally flee at 50% casualties. There's a chance they'll parlay instead of fleeing. As I mentioned before, alignment will be determined by the actions of the characters, depending on the situations. There will be maintenance and buying stuff. There'll be a monthly maintenance fee which will cover like their repairs, their food and drink, which is only like a couple silver pieces, and I have my own cost chart. I won't be using the For Against Darkness price list, but if I'm in a dungeon, right, and I want to generate some stuff, For Against Darkness is perfect for like generating room contents, corridor contents, searching corridors, searching rooms, etc. So I'll be using some of that. I'll go into more detail what I'm using, how I'm using it as I play along. All right, so we're gonna have characters, we're gonna have a space, a world, we're gonna have an action system, primarily Grail Quest, and other programmed adventures and random things. And we have the rules, which is For Against Darkness. Totally simple, totally fast, D6. So I think that's it for today. Like I said, I'm going to try to figure out how to post a character sheet so you can print it and use it if you want. But it's really simple. For Against Darkness, 3x5 card is all you need for it. But this has some additions, some changes, some hoserizations. So that's basically how I am setting up my solo RPG campaign. I hope it gives you some ideas of how you can set up a solo RPG campaign and run it. As I said, I'll be reviewing more products and things to help you along in the future. And as I said before, please, I would love questions and comments. So, the next time, our characters will be introduced and things will start happening. Until then, keep gaming, and I will see you at the solo RPG table.